My name is Kelly Sanders, and this is the night my family made it crystal clear I was never one of them. I showed up to my sister Veronica's wedding in Miami ready to smile, toast, and play the part of the supportive sister despite everything. But the moment I got there, something felt wrong, like I was walking into a trap. Then I saw it, the door to the reception hall locked tight with my name nowhere on the guest list. It wasn't a mistake, it was Veronica's way of saying I didn't belong. They thought I'd just slink away humiliated, but I didn't. I made a choice that night, and what happened next? Let's just say it turned their perfect little world upside down. If you've ever felt pushed out by the people who should love you most, drop a 1 in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Your stories keep me going, so hit that subscribe button for more real, raw drama like this. I pulled into the parking lot of the Ocean Breeze Resort in Miami, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The place screamed money, palm trees swaying under fairy lights, a marble fountain gurgling in the courtyard, and a glass-walled reception hall that probably cost more than my yearly rent. Veronica's wedding was a big deal, and I'd driven 3 hours from Tampa to be here to play the good sister, to pretend we were a normal family. But the knot in my stomach told me I was kidding myself. I stepped out of my car, smoothing my emerald green dress, nothing flashy, just elegant enough to blend in. I wasn't here to steal the spotlight. I just wanted to get through the night without a fight. The humid air clung to my skin as I approached the entrance. A young woman in a crisp blazer stood at a check-in table, her smile too bright, like she was selling something. Name, she asked, her pen hovering over a tablet. Kelly Sanders, I said, keeping my voice steady. Her smile flickered. She scrolled through the tablet, her brow furrowing, then looked up with a tight, apologetic grimace. I'm sorry, I don't see you on the list. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. I'm the bride's sister. She tapped the screen again, slower this time, like she was hoping the name would magically appear. I'm really sorry, ma'am. There's no Kelly Sanders here. I forced a laugh, though my chest tightened. There's gotta be a mix-up. Can you check again? She did, her fingers moving faster now, but the result was the same. I don't have you listed. Maybe you could call someone. The bride, or I cut her off, pulling out my phone. Yeah, I'll call my mom. My hands shook as I dialed Marjorie Sanders, my mother, who'd sent me a half-hearted text 2 days ago, wedding Saturday. Be there by 6. No warmth, no excitement, just an order. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Kelly, what is it? Marjorie's voice was sharp, distracted, like I'd interrupted something important. I'm at the check-in and they say I'm not on the guest list, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Can you sort this out? A long pause, then a sigh. Oh, Kelly, don't make a fuss. I'm sure it's just a glitch. Wait there, I'll send someone. Mom, I'm literally standing outside. Kelly, we're busy. Just wait. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, the sting of her words sinking in. Not even a minute to care that her own daughter was locked out of her sister's wedding. I glanced at the check-in woman who was pretending to be busy with her tablet, her pity practically radiating. I hated that look. I'd seen it my whole life, from teachers, neighbors, even my own family. Poor Kelly, always second best. Before I could decide what to do, I heard heels clicking on the pavement. Veronica Sanders, my sister, glided toward me in a cream silk dress that probably cost $1,000, her blonde hair swept into a perfect updo. She looked like a magazine cover, all poise and polish. But her smile, sharp, calculated, told me everything I needed to know. Kelly, what's the problem? Veronica asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. They say I'm not on the list, I said, meeting her gaze. You know anything about that? Her eyes widened, all innocence. Oh no, that's awful, must be a mistake. You know how crazy wedding planning is. So many details. She tilted her head, her smile tightening. Don't worry, I'll get it fixed. But she didn't move, didn't call anyone, didn't wave over a staff member. She just stood there, her arms crossed like she was waiting for me to give up and leave. That's when I knew. This wasn't a glitch. This was her. Veronica had made sure I was locked out, a public slap in the face to remind me of my place. My pulse hammered. I wanted to scream, to call her out right there, but I swallowed it down. Fine, I said, my voice low. I'll figure it out. Veronica's smile widened like she'd won. Good. Don't make a scene, okay? It's my day. She turned and sashayed back toward the reception hall, her dress catching the light as she disappeared through the glass doors. I stood frozen, the humid air pressing against me. The fairy lights blurred in my vision, and for a moment I considered getting back in my car and driving home. Let them have their perfect wedding without me. But something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe anger. I wasn't going to let Veronica win that easily. I pulled out my phone again and texted Wendy Larson, my best friend, who worked as an event coordinator at the resort. I'm locked out of Veronica's wedding. Not on the list. Can you help? Her reply came in seconds. Are you kidding me? Meet me at the side entrance. I'll get you in. I slipped around the building, my heels sinking into the soft grass. The side entrance was tucked behind a row of hibiscus bushes, out of sight from the main crowd. Wendy was already there, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, her event staff badge clipped to her black blazer. She took one look at my face and shook her head. Your sister's a piece of work, Kelly. Come on. She swiped her keycard and the door clicked open. I owe you, I said, stepping inside. You owe me a drink. Wendy shot back, her grin fading as she glanced toward the reception hall. Be careful in there. I've heard Veronica talking to the planners. She's got this place on lockdown. I nodded, my throat tight. Wendy's warning only confirmed what I already knew. Veronica wasn't just careless. She was cruel. The hallway led to the main reception area where laughter and music spilled out. I straightened my shoulders and walked toward the glass doors, bracing myself. I wasn't supposed to be here, but I was. And I wasn't leaving until I faced them all. Inside the room was a sea of elegant crystal chandeliers, white roses on every table, and a dance floor already buzzing with guests. I scanned the seating chart near the entrance, my heart sinking as I read the names. Marjorie and Philip Sanders. My parents were at the head table with Veronica and Ryan Kennedy, her groom. Veronica's friends, Ryan's cousins, even his old college roommate's girlfriend, they all had seats in the main hall. My name, nowhere. I spotted Marjorie across the room, fussing over Veronica's veil, her face glowing with pride. Philip stood nearby, sipping a drink, his usual blank expression in place. I took a step toward them, my hands clenching into fists. Mom, I called, keeping my voice even. Can we talk? Marjorie barely glanced at me. Kelly, not now. We're in the middle of things. It'll take a second, I said, my jaw tight. I wasn't on the guest list. And now I see, I don't even have a seat. Marjorie sighed like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Don't be dramatic. We had to prioritize the main family. You'll find somewhere to sit. I blinked, her words cutting deeper than I expected. Main family, I'm your daughter. Veronica appeared beside Marjorie, her smile as sharp as ever. Kelly, relax. It's just a mix-up. You know how hectic this stuff gets. Her voice was all sugar, but her eyes gleamed with amusement. She was enjoying this. I turned to Philip, hoping for something, anything. Dad, you okay with this? He shifted, not meeting my eyes. It's just a seat, Kelly. Let's not ruin the night. That was it. No defense. No concern, just the same old brush-off. My chest burned, but I didn't let it show. I'd spent years swallowing their dismissals, but tonight felt different, sharper. Like a line had been drawn, and I was on the wrong side of it. Wendy's voice broke through my thoughts. She'd slipped into the hall behind me, her badge still clipped on. Kelly, you good? She whispered, her eyes darting toward Veronica. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I meant it. Yeah, I'm staying. Veronica's smile faltered just for a second. She hadn't expected that. Good. Let her squirm. I turned away from my family, my resolve hardening. If they thought I'd just fade into the background, they were about to learn how wrong they were. Wendy tugged at my arm, her voice low. Kelly, you sure you want to stay? This place is a snake pit. I nodded, though my resolve felt shaky. I'm not giving Veronica the satisfaction of seeing me run. She gave me a look, half admiration, half worry, and slipped back into the crowd, her event badge catching the light. I took a deep breath and moved deeper into the hall, weaving through guests in tailored suits and sparkling gowns. The air smelled of roses and expensive perfume, but all I could feel was the weight of being an outsider in my own family's world. My eyes drifted to the head table where Veronica sat radiant in her wedding dress, laughing with Ryan Kennedy, her groom. Ryan was all charm, dark hair, easy smile, the kind of guy who could sell you a dream and make you believe it. But something about him seemed off tonight. His laugh was too loud, his glances too quick, like he was performing for someone. I wondered if he felt it too, the cracks in Veronica's perfect facade. I found a spot near the bar, leaning against the counter to steady myself. The bartender slid a glass of water my way, and I took it, grateful for something to hold on to. My mind wandered, pulling me back to a memory I'd tried to bury. 2 years ago, I'd been at my parents' house in Tampa, helping Marjorie sort through old files on her ancient desktop. She'd stepped out to take a call, leaving me alone with the computer. I wasn't snooping, not really, but a folder labeled Veronica caught my eye. I clicked it open, expecting photos or mementos. Instead, I found emails. Dozens of them from Veronica to her college friends, her coworkers, even a professor. One stood out, dated 3 years back when Veronica was climbing the ladder at her marketing firm. It's all about leverage, she'd written to a colleague. You find what people want, and you use it. My boss thinks I'm his golden girl, but he's just a stepping stone. Same with my family, they'll do anything if you play the part. I'd stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. She wasn't just ambitious. She was calculating, willing to manipulate anyone, even Marjorie and Philip, to get what she wanted. I'd searched for my name in the folder, hoping for something, anything. Nothing. Not a single mention. Like I was invisible. The memory hit me hard, the same ache I'd felt that day flooding back. Marjorie had always called Veronica her star, the one who made her proud. Philip, quiet as ever, went along with it, never questioning why I was always an afterthought. I'd spent years telling myself it didn't matter, that I was fine on my own. But standing here in a room full of people celebrating Veronica, the truth was undeniable. I wasn't fine. I was angry. A voice snapped me out of it. Kelly, right. I turned to see Ryan Kennedy standing beside me, a glass of bourbon in his hand. Up close, he looked tired, the charm from earlier fading. His tie was slightly loosened, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to read me. Yeah, I said, straightening. Ryan, congrats on the big day. He didn't smile. Instead, he leaned against the bar, his gaze flickering toward Veronica at the head table. She was laughing with a bridesmaid, oblivious to us. Thanks, he said, his voice flat. Can I ask you something off the record? I raised an eyebrow. Depends. What's this about? He hesitated, swirling the bourbon in his glass. Your sister, Veronica. Does she ever talk about me when I'm not around? Like say anything different? The question caught me off guard. I studied him, trying to figure out his angle. Ryan wasn't the type to fish for compliments, he had too much confidence for that. This was something else. Doubt, maybe. Or fear. I thought about the email I'd found, the way Veronica talked about using people. If she was playing that game with her own family, what was she doing with her husband? Why do you ask? I said carefully, keeping my tone neutral. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck, glancing at Veronica again. She's been off lately. Secretive. I catch her on calls she won't explain, or she'll change the subject when I ask about her work. I thought maybe you'd know something. I almost laughed. Know something? I knew Veronica better than anyone, not because we were close, but because I'd spent my life watching her. She was a master at getting what she wanted, at making people see only the version of her she chose. But I wasn't sure how much to tell Ryan. He was still her husband, at least for now. Veronica's always been good at keeping secrets, I said, choosing my words. If you're worried, maybe you should talk to her. He nodded, but his jaw tightened like he'd expected that answer and didn't like it. Yeah, maybe. He took a sip of his drink, then set it down hard on the counter. Thanks, Kelly. He walked away, his shoulders stiff, blending back into the crowd. I watched him go, my mind racing. Ryan's doubt was a crack in Veronica's perfect world, and I couldn't help but wonder how deep it went. Did he know something? Or was he just starting to see the real her? Before I could dwell on it, Wendy reappeared, her face tense. She pulled me aside, her voice barely above a whisper. Kelly, you're not going to believe this. I was checking the staff schedule in the office, and I overheard one of the planners talking about Veronica. She was on the phone last week going on about some plan with Ryan's money. Sounded shady as hell. My pulse quickened. What kind of plan? Wendy shook her head. I didn't catch details, they shut the door. But the planner said Veronica was laughing like it was a game. Something about securing her future before the wedding even happened. I felt a chill, the pieces starting to click. The email from years ago, Ryan's questions, now this. Veronica wasn't just manipulative, she was scheming, and Ryan was her target. I glanced at her across the room, still playing the perfect bride, her laughter cutting through the music. How many lies was she hiding behind that smile? I turned back to Wendy. Can you get me into that office? I need to know more. She hesitated, then nodded. Give me 10 minutes, I'll distract the staff. But Kelly, if you're digging into this, be careful. Veronica's not gonna like it. I know, I said, my voice steady. But I'm done playing nice. Wendy slipped away, and I stood there, the noise of the reception fading into the background. For the first time that night, I felt something shift inside me. Not just anger, but purpose. Veronica had spent years pushing me down, making me feel small. But if she was playing a game with Ryan, with everyone, I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. Wendy's warning echoed in my head as I followed her through a service hallway, the noise of the reception fading behind us. The air was cooler here, tinged with the faint smell of cleaning supplies, but my pulse raced like I was walking into a lion's den. Veronica's plan, whatever it was, felt closer now, like a shadow I could almost touch. I didn't know what I'd find in the office, but I knew one thing: my sister wasn't the golden bride everyone thought she was. Wendy stopped at a plain metal door, her keycard already in hand. This is the planner's office, she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. I'll keep watch. You've got 5 minutes before the staff comes back. I nodded, my throat tight. Thanks, Wendy. I owe you big time. She smirked, but her eyes were serious. Just don't get caught. She swiped the card and the door clicked open. Inside the office was a cramped mess, papers stacked on a desk, a whiteboard covered in schedules, and a laptop glowing faintly in the corner. I moved to the desk, my hands trembling as I scanned the papers. Most were invoices, seating charts, nothing useful. But then I saw it, a printed email tucked under a coffee mug with Veronica's name in the subject line. I pulled it out, my heart pounding. The email was from Veronica to someone named Claire, sent 2 weeks ago. Ryan's family is loaded, it read. His mom's got investments worth at least $10 million. Once we're married, I'll get him to sign over some assets easy enough with his Save the World complex. If he doesn't play ball, I've got a lawyer ready to file for divorce by next year. Either way, I'm set. I stared at the words, my blood running cold. Veronica wasn't just using Ryan. She was planning to bleed him dry, to walk away with his family's money and leave him broken. The email ended with a line that made my stomach churn. Keep this quiet. No one, especially Ryan's mom, can know. I slipped the email into my pocket, my mind racing. This wasn't just proof of Veronica's scheming, it was a bomb, one that could blow her perfect world apart. But before I could process it, the door swung open, and I froze. Gloria Kennedy, Ryan's mother, stood in the doorway, her sharp eyes locking onto mine. She was all elegance. Silver hair swept back a navy dress that screamed old money, but her expression was anything but soft. "Kelly Sanders?" she said, her voice low controlled. "What are you doing in here?" I swallowed my hand, still clutching the email. There was no point lying, she'd seen me. "I found something," I said, holding up the paper. "About Veronica. You need to see this." Gloria's gaze flickered to the email, then back to me. For a moment I thought she'd dismiss me, tell me to get out. But she stepped forward, closing the door behind her. "Show me." I handed her the email, watching as her eyes scanned the words. Her face didn't change, but her fingers tightened around the paper, the only sign of her anger. When she finished, she looked up, her voice like steel. "This isn't the first time I've had doubts about your sister. But this is worse than I imagined." "You knew something was off?" I asked, surprised. Gloria nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Veronica's been too polished, too eager to please me. I've seen women like her before, charming until they get what they want. I just didn't have proof. Until now." I hesitated, then said, "Ryan asked me about her earlier. He's starting to see it too." Gloria's eyes narrowed. "Then it's time we deal with this. Follow me." She led me out of the office, her heels clicking with purpose. Wendy was gone, probably back to her duties, and the hallway felt eerily quiet as we headed toward a private lounge near the reception hall. My stomach twisted with nerves, but there was no turning back. Gloria pushed open the door, revealing a small room with plush chairs and a glass table. Ryan was already there, pacing his tie, now completely undone. Veronica stood near the window, her arms crossed, her face a mask of calm. Marjorie and Philip Sanders. My parents sat stiffly on a couch, their expressions unreadable. "Kelly," Veronica said, her voice sharp as she saw me. "What's she doing here?" Gloria didn't give her a chance to continue. She held up the email, her voice cutting through the room. "Veronica, care to explain this?" Veronica's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly, laughing a high, brittle sound. "What is this? Some kind of joke? Kelly, did you fake this to make me look bad?" I stepped forward, my voice steady. "I didn't need to fake anything, Veronica. You wrote it. You've been planning to use Ryan from the start." Marjorie gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Kelly, that's enough. How dare you accuse your sister on her wedding day?" I turned to her, the years of being ignored boiling over. "Mom, open your eyes. She's not the saint you think she is." Veronica's smile vanished, her face twisting with anger. "You're just jealous, Kelly. You've always been. You can't stand that I'm the one who made it who people love." Ryan spoke up, his voice low, raw. "Is it true, Veronica? Were you planning to divorce me to take my family's money?" Veronica spun toward him, her voice softening, all sugar again. "Ryan, baby, you don't believe this, do you? They're lying. Kelly's always had it out for me." But Ryan wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Gloria, at the email in her hand. "Answer the question," he said, his tone hard. Marjorie stood, her voice trembling. "This is ridiculous. Veronica's under so much stress. Planning a wedding isn't easy. She'd never do this." Gloria's laugh was cold, sharp. "Stress doesn't make you plot to ruin your husband's life, Marjorie. This email is real. I've already had my people verify it." Veronica paled, her hands clenching into fists. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She turned to Philip, her last hope. "Dad, you know me. Tell them they're wrong." Philip shifted, his face tired, lined with years of staying silent. He looked at me, then at Veronica, and something in his expression changed, like he was seeing us clearly for the first time. "Veronica," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "I've let you get away with too much. Kelly's right. This has to stop." The room went still. Marjorie's mouth opened, but no words came out. Veronica's breath hitched, her eyes darting between us like a trapped animal. I'd never seen her like this, stripped of her charm, her control. For the first time in my life, my father had chosen me. "Dad, how could you?" Veronica whispered, her voice breaking. Philip didn't flinch. "You've hurt your sister for years, Veronica. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm speaking now." I stood there, my heart pounding, a strange mix of relief and disbelief washing over me. Philip's words weren't just an apology. They were a lifeline, something I'd never dared hope for. But I didn't let myself get lost in it. This wasn't over. Veronica wasn't the type to go down quietly. Gloria stepped forward, her voice calm but lethal. "Veronica, you've made a grave mistake underestimating this family. Ryan deserves better. And so does Kelly." Ryan's face was unreadable, but his hands were clenched, the bourbon glass long forgotten. He looked at Veronica, his voice barely above a whisper. "Was any of it real? Or was I just a paycheck to you?" Veronica's eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her composure cracking. "Ryan, I love you," she said, but the words sounded hollow, rehearsed. I took a slow breath, meeting Marjorie's gaze. She looked shattered, her hands trembling as she stared at Veronica. For once, she didn't rush to defend her. I turned to Veronica, my voice low. "You thought you could keep this up forever, didn't you? But the truth always comes out." Veronica's head snapped toward me, her eyes blazing. "You think you've won? You think this makes you better than me?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The email in Gloria's hand, the silence from Marjorie Phillips' words, they said enough. Veronica's world was crumbling, and she knew it. But I could see the fight in her eyes, the desperation. She wasn't done yet, and whatever came next was going to be ugly. "You're all turning on me." Veronica spat, her voice sharp, trembling with rage. She pointed at me, her manicured nail like a dagger. "This is your fault, Kelly. You've always hated me, always wanted to ruin me." I met her gaze, unflinching. "No, Veronica. You did this to yourself. You lied, you schemed, and now it's all falling apart." Her eyes blazed, but before she could fire back, Gloria stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. "Enough, Veronica," she said, her voice cold as ice. "Your words don't change the facts. This email proves you plan to manipulate my son to take his family's money and walk away. You're not a bride. You're a fraud." Veronica's breath hitched, her composure crumbling. She turned to Ryan, her voice softening, desperate. "Ryan, please. You know me. You know I love you. They're twisting everything." Ryan didn't move. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the email in Gloria's hand. "You didn't answer my question," he said, his voice low, raw. "Was it ever real? Or was I just a means to an end?" Veronica's lips quivered, but she didn't answer. The silence was deafening, a confession in itself. Marjorie let out a soft whimper, her hands covering her face, but she didn't speak. Philip remained still, his gaze steady on Veronica, no longer the passive father I'd known. Gloria's voice cut through again. "You've lost, Veronica, and you're about to lose a lot more." Veronica's head snapped toward her, panic flashing in her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" Gloria didn't answer. Instead, she nodded at Ryan, who reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small stack of papers stapled at the corner. My breath caught. I didn't need to see them to know what they were. Veronica's face drained of color, her hands trembling as she stared at the documents. "Ryan, what is that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ryan's expression was stone, his voice eerily calm. "Divorce papers. I had them drawn up last week after I found out you'd been meeting with a lawyer behind my back." A collective gasp rippled through the room, from Marjorie, from me, even from Philip. I hadn't expected this, not so soon. Veronica staggered back, her hand gripping the edge of a chair for support. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You can't mean that. We just got married." Ryan's eyes were empty, devoid of the warmth I'd seen earlier. "You contacted a divorce attorney 3 months ago, Veronica. Before we even set a date." You were planning to leave me the second you got your hands on my family's money. I have the emails, the call logs. It's over. Veronica's knees buckled, but she caught herself, her breath coming in short, frantic bursts. You're lying, she said, but her voice cracked the fight draining from her. She turned to Marjorie, her last lifeline. Mom, tell him he's wrong. Tell him I'd never do this. Marjorie's hands dropped from her face, her eyes wet with tears. She looked at Veronica, then at me, and for the first time I saw something break in her. Veronica, she whispered, her voice shaking, I can't keep defending you. Not anymore. The words hit like a thunderclap. Veronica's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She stood there alone in the center of the room, her world unraveling. I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even triumph, but all I felt was a hollow ache. This wasn't about winning. It was about truth. And the truth was uglier than I'd imagined. Veronica's eyes darted to me, her rage reigniting. You, she snarled, taking a step toward me. You did this. You turned them all against me. I didn't back down. You turned them against yourself, Veronica. You can't blame me for your choices. Her hand shot out fast and reckless, aiming for my face. I braced myself, but Gloria was faster. She stepped between us, grabbing Veronica's wrist with a grip that made her wince. Don't you dare, Gloria said, her voice low, dangerous. You've done enough. Veronica yanked her arm free, stumbling back, her breath ragged. The door to the lounge swung open, and I realized too late that we weren't alone anymore. The reception hall was just beyond, and guests had gathered near the entrance, their whispers growing louder. The music had stopped, replaced by the hum of curiosity. Veronica's outburst had spilled into the open, and there was no hiding it now. She spun toward the crowd, her face twisting with panic. What are you all looking at? She shouted, her voice shrill. But the guests didn't look away. They stared, some with shock, others with pity, their phones already out, capturing the moment. Ryan stepped forward, his voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. Veronica, it's over. I'm done. You're not my wife. You never were. The words landed like a final blow. Veronica's shoulders slumped, her eyes wide, unseeing. She turned to Ryan, her voice barely a whisper. You can't do this. You love me. Ryan shook his head, his face a mask of exhaustion. I loved someone who didn't exist. He held up the divorce papers, his hand steady. This is real. We're done. A murmur rippled through the guests, growing into a wave of gasps and whispers. Veronica's perfect wedding, her perfect life, was collapsing in front of everyone. She looked around, searching for an ally, a way out, but found none. Marjorie was silent, her face buried in her hands. Philip's gaze was fixed on the floor, his decision made. Gloria stood tall, her expression unyielding. Even the guests, her so-called friends, were pulling back, their loyalty fading with her facade. Veronica's eyes met mine, and for a split second I saw something raw, not just anger, but fear, maybe even regret. But it vanished as quickly as it came. She straightened, her chin lifting, and let out a bitter laugh. You all think you're better than me, she said, her voice unsteady. You'll see. You'll all regret this. She pushed past Gloria, past me, and stormed toward the reception hall. The crowd parted, their whispers following her like a shadow. I watched her go, her white dress trailing behind her, no longer a symbol of love, but a reminder of her lies. The guests turned to me, their eyes curious, some sympathetic, but I didn't care. This wasn't about their approval. It was about standing my ground. Gloria placed a hand on my shoulder, her touch firm but not unkind. You did the right thing, Kelly, she said quietly. Not everyone would have had the courage. I nodded, though my throat was tight. I just wanted the truth. Ryan looked at me, his face weary but grateful. Thank you, Kelly. I didn't want to believe it, but thank you. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him I was sorry, that I hadn't wanted it to end like this. But the truth was, I wasn't sorry. Veronica had built this disaster, and she'd have to live with it. I turned to Philip, who was watching me now, his eyes softer than I'd ever seen. "Kelly," he said, his voice low, "I should have stood up for you sooner." The words hit harder than I expected, a mix of relief and pain. I nodded, unable to speak. Marjorie was still silent, her tears falling freely now, but I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Not yet. The reception hall was chaos, guests, murmuring staff scrambling to restart the music, the fairy lights flickering like they sensed the shift. Veronica was gone, her exit a spectacle no one would forget. I took a slow breath, my hands unclenching for the first time that night. The truth was out, and with it, a weight I'd carried for years began to lift. But I knew this wasn't the end. Veronica's rage, her desperation, they'd come back. Maybe not tonight, but soon. And I'd be ready. I walked out of the Ocean Breeze Resort, the warm Miami air hitting my face like a release. The fairy lights in the courtyard flickered, their glow softer now, less mocking. Behind me, the reception hall was a mess of whispers and stunned faces, the echoes of Veronica's unraveling still hanging in the air. I didn't look back. My heels clicked against the pavement as I crossed the parking lot, my emerald green dress catching the breeze. For the first time that night, my shoulders felt light, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried my whole life. Veronica's lies were exposed. Ryan was free, and Philip had finally seen me. But this wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. I reached my car, pausing to lean against the door, the city lights of Miami stretching out beyond the resort. The skyline glittered, endless, alive, full of possibilities I'd never let myself see before. I'd spent years chasing my family's approval, thinking if I tried hard enough, stayed quiet enough, I'd earn a place at their table. But standing here, breathing in the salty air, I realized I didn't need their table. I could build my own. My phone buzzed in my purse, pulling me out of my thoughts. I pulled it out, expecting another call from Marjorie, another half-hearted apology I wasn't ready to hear. But it was Wendy Larson, my best friend, her name lighting up the screen. I answered, my voice steadier than I expected. "Hey, Kelly, where are you?" Wendy's voice was urgent but warm, like she was ready to jump in her car and find me. I saw Veronica storm out. "People are losing it in there." "I'm in the parking lot," I said, glancing back at the resort. "I'm done, Wendy. I'm not going back." A pause, then a soft laugh. "Good for you. You okay?" I closed my eyes, letting the question settle. Was I okay? Not entirely. The ache of years spent invisible didn't vanish in one night, but I felt something new. A spark, a sense of freedom I hadn't known I could claim. "I'm getting there," I said finally. "Can you meet me? I could use a friend." "On my way," Wendy said without hesitation. "Stay put." 10 minutes later, she pulled up in her beat-up hatchback, her event badge still clipped to her blazer. She stepped out, her dark hair loose now, and gave me a quick hug. "You look like you just survived a war," she said, her grin teasing but kind. "Feels like it," I admitted, managing a small smile. "Thanks for getting me in there tonight. I wouldn't have made it without you." Wendy waved it off, leaning against her car. "Please. You're tougher than you give yourself credit for." "So what's next? You gonna let Veronica keep running your life? Or are you done with that?" Her words hit home. Veronica had always been the center of our family's universe, her charm and ambition pulling everyone into her orbit. But tonight that orbit had collapsed, and I was the one walking away. "I'm done," I said, my voice firm. "She doesn't get to define me anymore." Wendy nodded, her eyes gleaming with approval. "That's my girl. Look, I've got a gig coming up, a big event in Orlando, some fancy corporate thing. They need a freelance editor for the promo materials." "You in?" I blinked, caught off guard. Wendy knew I'd been scraping by with my freelance editing gigs, piecing together a living while Veronica's success was shoved in my face. A project like this could be a game changer, not just for my bank account, but for me. A chance to build something of my own. "You serious?" I asked. "Dead serious," she said, crossing her arms. It's good money, about $5,000 for 2 weeks' work. Plus, it's a foot in the door with some big names. You're better than those small-time gigs, Kelly. Say yes. I hesitated, the weight of the night still lingering. But then I thought of Veronica's bitter laugh, Marjorie's silence, Philip's late apology. None of them had ever believed in me the way Wendy did. None of them had ever seen what I could do. Yes, I said the word, feeling like a promise to myself. I'm in. Wendy grinned, punching my arm lightly. That's what I'm talking about. Let's get out of here. There's a dive bar down the street with your name on it. We drove away from the resort, the Miami skyline fading in the rearview mirror. The bar was small, crowded with neon signs and sticky tables, but it felt right. We ordered drinks, a beer for me, a margarita for Wendy, and sat in a corner, the noise of the crowd wrapping around us like a shield. For the first time in hours, I could breathe. My phone buzzed again as we talked. A text from Marjorie. Kelly, we need to talk. I'm sorry about tonight. Please, call me. I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to call, to hear her out, to believe she meant it. But another part, the part that had stood up to Veronica, that had walked out of that reception, knew better. Marjorie's apologies always came with strings, with excuses for Veronica, with reasons why I should just let it go. I wasn't ready for that. Maybe I never would be. I set the phone down, screen dark, and took a sip of my beer. Marjorie wants to talk. I told Wendy, my voice flat. She raised an eyebrow. You gonna? I shook my head. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. She's had years to see me, Wendy. I'm not begging for it anymore. Wendy clinked her glass against mine. Damn right. You're better than that. The next week passed in a blur. I threw myself into work, outlining ideas for the Orlando project with Wendy. My inbox filled with emails from the event team, each one a reminder that I was building something real, something mine. Marjorie called twice more, leaving voicemails I didn't listen to. Philip sent a single text. I'm proud of you, Kelly. It was short, simple, but it hit harder than I expected. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need his words to feel whole anymore. Veronica, meanwhile, had vanished. No social media posts, no calls, no trace of the perfect bride she'd spent years crafting. I heard through a mutual friend that she'd left Miami, maybe gone to stay with a cousin in Atlanta. Her silence was loud, a stark contrast to the noise she'd always made. Part of me wondered if she'd try to come back to spin a new story, to claw her way out of the mess she'd made. But that was her problem now, not mine. One night, as I packed for Orlando, I stopped by a shelf in my apartment. A framed photo sat there, a family picture from years ago taken at a Christmas party. Veronica was front and center, her smile dazzling, Marjorie's hand on her shoulder. Philip stood stiffly beside them, and I was at the edge, half cut off, like I'd been an afterthought even then. I picked up the frame, tracing the glass with my finger. For so long I'd wanted to belong to that picture, to be seen the way Veronica was. But now, looking at it, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. That family wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never had been. I set the photo face down and turned to my suitcase, zipping it shut. The Orlando job was a fresh start, a chance to write my own story. Wendy would be there, cheering me on, and for the first time I believed in myself the way she did. I stepped out onto my balcony, the Tampa skyline glowing in the distance, and took a deep breath. The past was behind me, its weight finally gone. Ahead was something new, not perfect, not easy, but mine.